Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Brave Briefings, where brave men and women either share their stories or they provide tips on how we can live safely and peaceful in a world that is devoid of harassment and sexual and gender based violence. Are you brave? Hi, I am Lois, your friend for forgiveness from Walking Without Skin. And today I believe I have another brave woman with us, and I'd like to welcome Keci Reynolds. Hi, Keci.
Hello there. Hello there.
So thank you for joining us from Georgia.
Yes.
Would you like to share a little about yourself with our viewers?
Sure. I am Keci Reynolds. I go by Keci Monique for my, businesses and that type of thing. I am a relationship coach to single women, and these single women would like to get married. It's not every single woman, but primarily the ones who are looking to get married. And so I'm also um, an author, and I'm also an entrepreneur and also a speaker. And so, what I like primarily is to see people establish more boundaries. And what that looks like in every relationship, you have to have a set of boundaries. So, boundaries protect us. It's just like you going to buy a piece of property, and you have certain outlines that are your side of the property and your neighbor's side, and or the city or the county side. Whatever the case is, these are your boundaries, and they are to protect you. The boundaries that we fail to set causes a lot of trauma. It causes emotional harm. It causes us a lot of agony, and sometimes it ends in tragic results. So one of the things that I teach the women in my classes is it is imperative to set these boundaries. It is mandatory to keep out those who are coming, to commit malice in your life. Not everyone who comes into your life comes with a good purpose. Not everyone comes into your life to do good things. And I've experienced this myself. So that is why I feel like I am an expert in this area. I had to set boundaries. I love the idea now that I can actually go to sleep at night without having to wonder or worry about if this person is going to do something to me because I may have said or did something that they didn't like. And I'll say this, a lot of times people will compensate the amount of time that they've dealt with someone, whether it's a friend, even a family member. You cannot allow time to dictate whether you establish boundaries or not. Time is just that. It's just time. It's something we won't ever get back. It's something we can't really even compensate for. You can't make up time. So what you can do going forward is set the boundaries and move forward in those. So I recently ended a friendship with someone of about 21 years. And it's because we had a difference of opinion. And one thing was said with no malice on my part. And this young lady took it and ran with it and accused me of being belligerent with her. And I was like, this is not how this works. And so I had to explain to her, we've been through this rodeo before. I'm no longer prepared to go through this with you again. And my boundary was right there. I'm cutting this off because I've allowed her back in my life, knowing that she committed this type of, I can say, infraction in my life before. So I had to say, no, we're not doing this anymore. And I had to say bye. So we have to not be afraid to lose in order to gain the positivity.
Not always that easy to let go of
It's not.
long-standing
It's not
friendships.
an easy process. It really isn't. And there are some emotions there because you're literally going through a breakup. So whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, even a family member, you're going to have some form of emotion behind that because you spent a lot of time with this person. So to say it's easy, I would be lying. It is a very difficult process. None of it's easy. I guarantee you that.
So what is one tip that we can give the ladies out there to set boundaries? And then how can we get that message across to the men?
Okay, so one of the things I would say in regards to boundaries is, okay, what I did when I knew that I wanted to get married. It's a mindset thing, first of all. You have to make up in your mind that this is what I'm going to do. And I don't know if you've heard the phrase, but a lot of us have heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to keep us sane. So you have to build that village, and that village has to be a group of positive people, not people saying what you want them to say or what you want to hear, but people that will tell you the truth in love. People that can see things that you might not be able to see right now. People that can discern things that you may not be able to discern right now. So you have to build that village that will love you no matter what's going on in your life and tell you the honest to God's truth. Now, for me, when I wrote down my boundaries back in 2010, I had just went through a terrible relationship. And once the relationship ended, I was determined that, you know what, I'm not going through this anymore. So I had to make up my mind. And it was rough. Even getting a counselor, I had to go see a counselor because the mindset thing was challenging. And there were not a lot of coaches around, or so I probably would have sought to see a coach. But at the time, I went to this counselor and she talked to me about warning signs. And I was like, warning signs? Wow, that's a good one. Explain that. And so when she began to explain how you see a stop sign, you see a red light, a yellow light, you even see the green light. She was like, these are the same signs that are in our lives. And I thought that was so profound, and it was eye-opening for me. And I live by that now. So when I start seeing these signs, even if I don't act on it right away, I still take ownership that, you know what, I have to make a decision at some point in time because there's too many red flags. So I would really strongly suggest writing down your boundaries and establish what I call the 80-20 rule. And so the 80-20 rule is 80% of what people must have to be in your village. So let's say, for instance, you might like to drink alcoholic beverages, but then, at some point in time, you might want to excessively drink, but you have one person in your village that'll say, listen, this is too much and you need help. That is someone you want in your village. I see the dangers ahead. This is someone who you would want in your village. But now if you have someone to say, yeah, girl, let's go ahead and let's just toss it up and we're just going to keep drinking, you might want to really reevaluate that. And you might be the one to have to set a boundary for that person. So there's 20% that you can say is a negotiable. Now, you may not like exactly what this person have going on at a particular time in their life, but little infractions that will not make or break a relationship. Like, for example, if a person says, well, I'm not going to go to work today, I'm going to play hooky. That's not something that would make or break a relationship for me. That's something that person will have to deal with as the consequences arise, but it wouldn't break a relationship for me. So saying that to say that 80-20 rule it's a must. Relationships, intimate, family-wise, friendships, even with coworkers, you have to have boundaries. You have to have boundaries. You have to look at the 80% of what you must have and the 20% that's a negotiable.
Okay, so we set our boundaries. How do we share those boundaries with our loved ones, with our partner?
Okay, so what I would recommend and what I did is I basically implemented first. especially if you're already in a relationship. It may be a little bit difficult because this person may be used to you doing things a certain way. And so, for example, I had a friend named Keisha. Let's just call her Keisha. And she was dating this guy. And the guy was used to her getting off the phone every time he came home. She'd get off the phone and wouldn't talk to anyone, no friends or anything. And so I asked her, what is the plan if you ever need someone in your hour of need? How do you know your friends aren't calling you with something serious or just to kind of have a girl's moment? And she was like, I never thought of it like that. And I said, I'm not telling you to not to cater to him, but your every idle moment cannot be dedicated to your relationship. That's just not healthy. And so it ended up happening. Once she started to change, he made the comment, you're changing. Ever since you met Keci, things are not the same. And so it wasn't to disrupt everything, but for her to have a healthy balance. So it's uncomfortable at first, but you have to create a healthy balance, because if he's out spending all his idle time with his friends and he's hanging out, doing whatever else he's doing, but then when he comes home, he wants you to stop, drop, and roll, that's not fair. It's not balanced. And at the end, when you need someone, no one's going to be there, because every time they call you, they may have something to really share with you, and you have to get off the phone because he's walking through the door. So that's not a healthy balance right there. You have to have that balance there. So sometimes you might have to get off the phone and say, you know what, let me talk to him and see how his day is going. I'll call you back, and make sure you call that person back so that your word is honored. But if you never call back, if you never take the time to see what your friends are going through, you can really end up in a situation in the end where you need people and they won't be there for you. So I would really strongly recommend creating that healthy balance right there.
And would you suggest one does it at the beginning of a relationship?
Absolutely. If you are new to a relationship, or if you are planning on getting in a relationship, or you dating, I wouldn't necessarily tell the person what my boundaries are. I would more so implement. And reason being is because when someone knows your boundaries, or if they know what your moves are, I found that they kind of take those things and they test you. So in my opinion, it's better to implement. And as you grow and you begin to trust this person, and you know that this person without a shadow of a doubt will not breach your trust, then you can start sharing. If they say, well, why did you do this in the beginning? And I do this with my husband. It's so funny because me and my husband, we have a 12-year difference. I'm older than him by 12 years. This year we'll be married 10 years. And so we talk a lot about how we may have crossed paths, at certain points in times. And, how I had things going on in my life, and I just wasn't prepared to bring anyone new in my life at that time. And so he understood, but then after we got to know each other and really have spent these last 10 years and some together, I explained to him what my boundaries were at the time. He has never breached them. He has never crossed them. I implemented, and to find out he had his own set of boundaries. It was so funny. And we talked about it. He implemented his, and he didn't even realize that I was implementing mine. And so it was so neat because our boundaries were in a line with each other. And it was amazing. It was amazing. So until you can really build that trust with that person, don't tell your left hand what your right hand knows. So you got to kind of just play the game without playing the game.
And what happens if 10 years into your relationship, you suddenly find that your boundaries are completely different?
I say alter them. And on my podcast, I have one of my co-hosts. She's been married 18 years. She got married right out of high school. And I love her story because she talked about how in the beginning, she had this one set of boundaries, but as she grew, things changed. And this year they'll be coming up on 19 years of marriage. And so she even talks about how her boundaries changed from last year to this year. And the only thing I would say is make your boundaries realistic. So if like, let's say, for example, some women want a man with a 6-figure income. Okay. And while that might be realistic, you may have to have that same 6 figures or at least 5. But if you're looking for this guy who is just this beauty god, and he just has no flaws, and he has this like super perfect skin, and you're looking at everything except for the character and the heart and the emotion, it's a fail. And these are things that she talked about with her and her husband. And she looked at, where she had to do different damage control and, fix things up, for herself, and, make sure that when they're in the public's eye, that not only were they acceptable to each other, but regardless of who accepted them or not, they were still okay with themselves. So the boundaries also have to be realistic. And so I love her story. And she's a phenomenal coach as well. But the boundaries have to be realistic, and they have to be at some point, because you're going to graduate from different stages in your life. And at that time, when you elevate to a new level, guess what? You have to set new boundaries. So let's say, for instance, you are making 5 figures and you're on your way to making 6 figures. Sometimes you might find that those friends who were there at the 5-figure level, they may not be your friends at the 6-figure level, because sometimes people get jealous, they get envious, they want to compete. And guess what? You have to let it be okay to let it go. It doesn't mean that you don't love that person. It doesn't mean that you don't want the relationship with that person. But if it's not conducive, guess what? It's time to say goodbye. And again, none of this is easy. It sounds easy, but it's not easy. Listen, I was dealing with this young lady as my friend for 20 plus years. And to have to say goodbye, it was a bit devastating for me. I went through a lot of emotions behind that. So don't be discouraged if you are feeling emotional behind a situation. But if it's something mandatory that you must do it. Find a way to get through it. Call on your village. Let them know, hey, I need to talk to you. And this village cannot breach your confidence. They cannot breach your trust. It can't just be someone who is a busybody, and every time you call them, they're calling 5 other people to tell your business. These people have to be people you trust. And if you cannot find someone who can do that, my strong recommendation is to get with a counselor or a therapist. Strongly, because the only time they're going to tell is if you're planning to hurt yourself or hurt others. So, or if you've committed some type of crime. But outside of that, I would strongly recommend getting with your village and letting them know, hey, I have a problem, and I'm really, feeling this. And you want unbiased support. You don't want them to say, well, yeah, get rid of that person because I never liked them anyway. Me as a woman, I'll say this. There are people who I didn't like, but when my friends would come to me, whether I liked them or not, I would be fair, in all fairness, because I know this person would have some type of connection to this person, whether it's a long-term friendship, even a romantic relationship. I would still be fair in my judgment and my giving my advice. And I try to help them see the positive things. And so I can honestly say that because this same young lady, she dealt with a man for 10 years who I did not like at all, but I helped her pull out the positive. I helped her pull out the negative so that she can make an educated decision for herself. And at the end of the day, after 10 years, she finally decided to go her separate way. So you got to find people who are like that for you, or at least close to it, because you may not find it everywhere, but there are some people who are genuinely good and they really have your best interest at heart. And those are the people you want to surround you.
Oh, there's so much there. So yes, boundaries, it's so important. And we didn't even touch on sexual boundaries, but that is great. There's so much information there. Thank you, Keci. So what I'd like to do is put your contact detail below so that people can get hold of you, especially those single women who are looking for a permanent relationship.
Yes.
And
yes.
you do online consulting?
Yes.
Great.
Can I say something in reference to sexual boundaries?
Yeah.
If it's something that you are not willing to do not sacrifice that. Don't do it. And I'll say this. I remember meeting a gentleman, and he was in a relationship at the time, so it was off limits for me, 100%. I ended up seeing him a couple of months later because our daughters were in the same pre-K class. And he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "I'm dropping my baby off. Like, I see your baby's here, you know," and we didn't know at the time. And so after a while, we began to build a friendship, and it was very surface. I left it at surface because I was not about to cross that boundary with him. So it was like, if I see you, hey, how's it going? But it wasn't the type of relationship where, hey, let's go have lunch. We could go have lunch if his at the time fiance was coming, but she didn't want to come. So guess what? There was no lunch. Well, I later found out that him and the lady got divorced. So he wanted to date me at that time. So I was kind of open to the process, and I said, okay. And we touched on sex. So I found out there were some things that he liked to do sexually that I didn't, i.e. being anal sex. That was not something that was appealing to me. So therefore, that relationship right there, it ended because I wasn't going to sacrifice that. Now, for those who love it, it's no pun intended, because there are some women who absolutely adore it. I'm just not one of them. And I will say, even if it's oral sex, if it's whatever, if it's not something that's appealing to you, you have to find someone who aligns with what your sexual desires are. Do not give up something that you are not willing to continue in the long run, because it's going to be devastating in the end. And you're going to look and you're going to say, I gave you this and I gave you that, and I didn't even want to do these things. And so guess what? Now you're faced with, well, why did you do it then? Because I thought you liked it. And it's, well, I did it to make you happy, but who's making you happy? So you have to be satisfied in the process. You cannot just give up things that you really don't want to give up with your body. This is your body. You're responsible for it. And you cannot just give some, even if it's your husband, there are boundaries in marriage. There's a book, if you go on Amazon, it's a book called Boundaries in Marriage, Boundaries in Dating. Listen, if you need to know more about it, get those books. Now, they're not my books, but I highly recommend them because they helped me. And do not sacrifice more than you are really willing to give, especially in that sexual department.
Very sound advice. Thank you so much. So, viewers, you too can be brave, and you can help us stop the scourge, this pandemic. You can contact Keci, information below, or you can contact me, Lois, at Walking Without Skin. So do join us and be bold, be brave, and fly free. Thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Bye.